Dan, hasn't everything already been said about the MXR Distortion Plus and the DOD Overdrive Preamp 250?
Yeah. Never stopped us before. We should just end it there. Should just finish now. Hey everyone, welcome to That Tele Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello.
What an absolutely glorious wall of noise.
That's the kind of thing you want to be doing on a Tuesday morning.
Man, that really does sound epic. So,
hello, welcome.
Yes.
Please subscribe. Oh, it's causing me a lot of work, man. Please subscribe and go to That Pedal Show store. That's how we fund the show.
Okay, Distortion Plus, DOD 250.
We've never done it.
We haven't done it.
So regular viewers of That Pedal Show will know that we'll talk about tube screamers till the cows come home, the clowns go home. We'll talk about, what does Josh say? Words is hard. We'll talk about clones, we'll talk about DS1s, we'll talk about all kinds of things, but we've never really got into the Distortion Plus and the DOD OD Preamp 250.
Mm-hmm.
And why are these interesting, Dan?
Well, the really early versions of distortion pedals, when these are, so Distortion Plus, it's such a simple circuit, like the simplest circuit. But there are a bunch of, when these came out, there's a lot of players use them to juice their cranked amps that were already working.
Yeah, that's part of the discussion because they fallen out of favour, partly because, as Dan said, it's a really simple circuit. Right, go and watch the JHS video on the history of these and also watch Brian Wampler's stuff because Wampler. They will cover the history in much more detail than we want to get into today. But broadly, developed at the same time around a new kind of op amp.
Yes. And
the easiest way possible to get distortion from it, which was...
two clipping diodes.
Yeah. So not in any way complex like many modern overdrive and distortion pedals would be. It was a really simple way to do it.
Super simple.
And thus had some significant downsides that became more relevant the more we go down the years. Stuff like true bypass. Stuff like, is it loud enough? Stuff like, it's noisy. And as such, the world of modding and circuit development for these pedals has gone utterly crazy. We only have one inspired by today, which is the Reeves Plus. There are many more. This is not an exhaustive history of pedals that have been inspired by the Distortion Plus and the DOD 250 because the circuits are basically the same, but for
the different sorts of clipping diodes. So traditionally, the MXR Distortion Plus uses germanium clipping diodes. The DOD 250 from and the DOD 250 uses silicon. So
from Silimony. Sorry, I'm just trying to throw him off today.
Yeah, and they are a different sound. The germanium clipping diodes, because of the forward voltage, they clip a bit sooner, a little bit softer. The silicon diodes, a little bit of a harder edge. Both really great. It's just a matter of taste.
Different sound. And as Dan alluded earlier, typically used into amps that are overdriving a bit. So
not even just overdriving, but working.
Yeah.
Amps that are starting to limit.
Yeah, fans of this in its original form include Yngwie Malmsteen.
There you go.
Fans of this in its original form with a little bit of other stuff, Randy Rhoads.
Randy Rhoads.
And that gives you a bit of a clue about how they were being used early doors.
Yeah.
Not in the modern idiom of clean pedal platform amp, where you might want a bit more EQ shaping, you might want a bit more of all kinds of things. Anyway, so the DOD Overdrive Preamp 250 that we've got is the modern reissue. Sparkly box, so say original components, although they're not because they're small.
That's self-mount.
They could be the original component values, perhaps.
Okay, right.
But importantly, a modern version of that LM741 chip. The MXR Distortion is an 80s one.
Yes.
Early 80s. So we're not exactly comparing like with like because they're not both vintage examples. And on that subject, sorry, we'll get to some noise in a minute. What is the classic vintage version of the 250 anyway? Because there have been so many variants.
Yeah.
Distortion Plus, by all accounts, stayed more consistent but changed through the ages. This one does have, we checked, the 741 op amp and the germanium diodes.
Correct.
Yeah?
The 1N270 germanium diodes.
Which do the clipping.
Yeah, they're the classic ones. So, because it's such a simple circuit, over the people like to swap the diodes out. They if they have clon diodes, they throw those in there,
Yeah.
or swap the silicon for germanium for silicon. One of the beautiful things about this board for modders is there's so few components on it. They're spread far and wide. It's easy to get in there and mod it.
Modder's paradise.
There you go.
And as such, it's also said that it begat a lot of other very famous overdrive and distortion pedals that we know, but with the addition of things like tone controls and all of that. By all accounts, according to Josh and Brian Wampler anyway, the minute you start doing stuff like that, it becomes fundamentally different.
Completely.
It isn't the same thing. Okay, right, enough of that. The Reeves Plus, it's called, is a modern boutique take on it. You'll know Marcus Reeves, point to point. He's sourced some military spec op amps.
Oh, cool.
And all of that, and that amazing point to point. I'll do a shot of it so you can see it. It's incredible. The reason the DS1 and the BP1 Waza are on there are purely for context. So we know the DS1 and we know what a basic booster sounds like. Let's listen to it next to those. So much talking. The Ross was another version of it.
Yeah.
And that is an original one. Thanks, Johnny, who sent it to us.
Yes, thank you, Johnny.
All right. God. The Marshall today is a 50 watt Plexi 1987X, which we have finally modded and removed the bright cap, and it just sounds infinitely better now.
Really does.
The C5 bright cap has been removed. And it's got a source audio collider in the loop. Enough talking. We're also using a attenuator, which is currently in its absolutely least attenuated version, the Iron Man 2.
Yeah, even with that least attenuated version, it's still attenuating a bit.
Tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah.
Here's the amp. Just added a tiny bit of room reverb because it is a bit brutal without it. We'll put some delay in a bit.
Sounds great. The loop sounds great.
Yeah.
Works really well.
Yeah. It's good. So as we said, that's in its least attenuated. The Iron Man is with the boost function on and the knob all the way around to the right.
And where's the gains set on the amp?
The amp is at number 2.
Okay.
Just under 2. We'll crunch it up in a minute. But let's listen to the Distortion Plus then and the Preamp 250 and the difference.
You can hear, first of all, awesome. I love it. You can hear in the DOD 50, the reason I play those a little bit more of a close harmony chords, you could hear the distortion and the harmonics with the DOD differently. The MXR is a bit softer.
It is convenient, isn't it? I mean, if they do happen to be germanium and silicon, if that is the case, that would be what you would associate with that.
Absolutely.
But there's also some low mid in a Distortion Plus that's absent from the DOD. And so I'm saying DOD, right? So David Orest Di Francesco, who is DOD, wanted it to be called DOD.
As in Ken Dodd.
But everybody else called it DOD, including his business partner. Anyway, so if I say DOD, I'm with David, right?
Okay.
And when I was 15, they
Camp
were DOD.
David?
They were DOD. Come on, that's not very nice. They were DOD when I was 15, so if I say DOD, apologies. Anyway, so one thing it is criticised for is for sounding thin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and original ones anyway, not having that much volume on tap, and you'll notice from the Distortion Plus, the output is really cranked around.
Yes.
So in this new version, I guess they've put more level in it, and they've added true bypass, which we'll get onto in a minute.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, into the clean amp, it's so far doesn't deserve the kicking that they get.
Oh,
for
not
me,
at all.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is the gain into the clipping diodes is huge, but that's where all the distortion happens.
Yeah, and like 40 some dB or
exactly.
something crazy amount of gain.
Exactly.
Maybe 15 to 20 in a typical boost, just to put that in context.
Yeah, but at the end of the circuit, you do have to have that output, turned all the way up. But I'm a fan. Can I just hear the Distortion Plus just for 1 second? And if you can just go through the gain range of the distortion.
Yeah, then we'll turn the amp up in a second. And what I'll do on the end of that is turn the DS1 on for context so that you can hear how different it is. We're not saying the DS1 is the same thing at all. It's not even nearly the same thing. It's purely because it's better known.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah. The mids are just glorious. So it's very interesting. As you turn the gain up, it gets brighter.
Yeah, but also more lower mids.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's because the cab's working harder. Could be.
It's a world away from the DS1.
Like,
couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah, so you'll hear the very distinct EQ curve in the DS1, like super, super crazy scoopy.
Yeah. Which is cool, but here in the mids and in the Distortion Plus, it's like
old school, isn't it?
So old school, and there's a sweet point. It's like, does it get any better than this? It really does. It just feels perfect. But you can...
And the amps, I mean, it's pushing the amp hard, but the amp is still not really overdriving massively.
That's right. There. But there's something about... So remember, in the day, these were in every pub band.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's use a distortion pedal.
Yeah.
If you can imagine designers now that have a Hot Rod Deluxe or a little AC-15,
Yeah.
these guys would have had a Marshall stack and gone, let's find a way that we can juice this.
Yeah, or a cooking twin or whatever
Yeah,
it
exactly.
was. You know, it would have been a really loud amp that was doing a different thing. Hence, I guess you go, oh my God, I need a tone control. I need to be able to change this in some way.
Right,
But
okay.
That's working for me. Let's have a quick listen with the humbuckers before we move on. Just see what it does off of volume control a little bit. So the sweet spot seemed to be around here, didn't it?
Yeah.
In fact, we'll start there and I'll turn it up.
Stank face.
That massive, by the way, is probably because it's not true bypass, right?
And well, we are impedances and all that sort of stuff, and such high gain.
Bit of DC leakage.
Yeah, all that stuff. What's really interesting about the design of this, the input impedance of these pedals is like really high.
Is
like
it?
10, 11 meg.
Which is why it works nice on this.
Yes. So
I was enjoying the cleanup, I have to say.
yeah. So the way they do a couple of things, the way they do the power supply. Oh no, it's very boring, and everyone else covered that. But there's a couple of things in there that mean that the input impedance is really, really high.
Yeah.
Which is great for cleanup and keeping clarity and all that stuff.
The perhaps because of the less low mids in the general EQ curve of it and the way it does the clipping, the DOD, this newer DOD, stayed cleaner and clearer on the neck pickup.
Yeah.
The MXR Distortion Plus kept some of that woolliness, but in the full volume version of the neck pickup, it was kind of into fuzz territory.
Yeah.
Kind of into, late 60s vibe in a big way, into the Marshall and with the humbucker, the DOD staying clearer. Man, it's a nice noise.
It's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a 50 watt Marshall. It's on 2, so it's flipping loud, but not really overdriving hugely in the amp.
No, the amp's in a really nice place, but it's pushing it.
We'll invoke the booster preamp in a minute, the Boss booster preamp, when we crank the amp a bit. Let's listen to the Reeves a little bit before we crank the amps, just to get an idea of where it sits with the Distortion Plus.
Sure.
Okay.
Why is that so much fun? I know we're loud and loud is fun, but there is something about, I can still hear the guitar, even with that level of grrr.
Because it's simple. It's simple. It's not overdone. Anyway, I don't want to do that because I'll cause lots of hurt to lots of people. Okay, so in that context, I think some of the things, we're hearing more bottom end and lower mids in both the DOD and the MXR than the Plus. And I think that is going to make sense when we crank the amp.
Okay. One quick thing I just wanted to mention, one of the downsides of the original Distortion Plus is the way they do the bypass. So it's really compromised. So just for a quick demonstration, if we turn the MXR off, and Mick, if you just toggle between the Distortion Plus being on and off. So what this is going to do is put the MXR in bypass in the signal chain. Now, there is no buffers. There's nothing in the signal chain between the guitars and the amp. And this is how much top end we've got. So when you hear people talk about tone suck, that's what they're talking about.
And the only extra thing that was in the chain there was the 2 short cable runs between the switch and there. You heard there was a little bit in there as well, because that circuit's loading it down a tiny bit too. Even though I believe that is true bypass, please check that. I'm going to check and put it on screen. I'm pretty sure with the Reeves we weren't hearing any at all, so maybe it's not. Absolutely massive difference.
Yeah.
So, which is to say that if that is in line, if you've got that pedal in line with your regular pedals and you don't have a switcher like this,
that affects everything.
Massive, massive tone suck. And one reason why you might want a buffer at the beginning and a buffer at the end, let's not get into that. But yeah,
that won't solve that problem.
It will help make it a tiny bit brighter, won't it? But not
make
really.
it but the problem is, it is like the signal in bypass is always going through that.
Yeah.
So exactly.
Same with early wah-wahs, same with, And that was, oh God, tangent. That's why true bypass was such a thing early doors. These days, with buffered bypass and all the different kinds of bypass you can get, it's less holy grail, isn't it?
Yeah.
But back then, true bypass, flipping heck,
was a big deal.
Was a huge deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Creates its own problems elsewhere, but anyway, let's not go into that. All right. Okay.
Let's crank it,
this
baby.
This is fun.
Yes.
Right. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to turn the Marshall up till it starts overdriving. What a shame. And then if we feel the need, I'll just attenuate it ever so slightly, but
let's see how we go.
We don't really need to. But...
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we've attenuated it. Literally, the Iron Man attenuator is still in its maximum position. Open
Okay.
position. I've just turned the boost off.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I think we might be down to like minus 3 dB.
Right.
Solo is... Yeah, it's in high mode. It's in high mode and the solo is off. Therefore, it is minus 3 dB. So all we've done is take 3 dB off compared to 0 dB being taken off before.
Okay.
But now it's in its... it has an effect, even though it's in the loop.
And where are we at volume-wise on the dials?
Well,
2 o'clock.
Yeah, 2 o'clock, obviously, just past 2 o'clock.
Okay.
8. And with a Les Paul, that sounds like this. I'd say what's interesting about that is we're actually reading less dBs than we were before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Screw that. No attenuation.
That's the sound.
That's better, isn't it?
That's the sound.
We'll obviously you can hear a lot more hum now because the amp's really working. Interestingly, let's see, instead of turning the boost off, let's add attenuation. So this should be the same thing.
Okay. Better.
That's better.
Yeah.
That's a sort of a halfway house.
Yeah.
So just for clarification, high mode, boost on. It's not boosting anything, it's just the
Open.
boost is extra 3 dB off.
Okay.
So now we're in the 0 dB as far as the boost is concerned, but we've gone one back on the thing. I actually think it sounds better.
I agree.
So now then, we gallop to the point. Really, this is closer to what these things were designed to be used for.
Okay.
So let's do that a bit. Start sensible.
Okay.
Dan, good luck. I think the old Tele might feed back a bit, but give it a go. They all sound much more similar now.
Yeah. Yeah, because the amp's limiting. So
I did actually turn the amp down a bit because it was dying.
yeah. But because the limiting of the amplifier, then you don't hear as much
Yeah.
of the character of what's going into it.
Yeah, because it's just hammering the amp even harder.
It was interesting having the almost the treble booster mode.
Yeah, well, there's
the
three
Plus.
modes on the Plus, on the Reeves Plus. The top one is full out, everything full. The bottom one is less,
Right.
and the middle one is less again.
Okay.
So the middle one is like,
Almost treble booster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
okay, let's have a quick. I'm going to cheat and add some delay just for some, for some interest. So
there was no point to that apart from I just wanted to hear it with the SG. The different bottom man configurations of the Plus really makes sense when the amp is working that hard.
yeah, it's because when you to get the note definition, you have to chop away some of that bottom end, and the Plus does that brilliantly. And it also gives it a kind of an upper mid honk, which is very, very, very classic rock. The DOD does it to a lesser degree.
Yeah.
It's clearer sounding.
It's a clearer sounding thing, which is great.
And the Distortion Plus, the muddiest of the lot.
Yeah.
Which, if you turn that on its head, the Distortion Plus probably the best into a cleaner amp.
Yeah. Into a cleaner, brighter amplifier.
Yeah. The Ross is left lacking in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just kind of not really in the game. But it might be that we didn't mess around with the controls a lot. I really like the new OD Preamp 250.
Yeah, me too.
I think that sounds really clear. And actually, for all this talk, actually just a straight boost sounded fantastic as well.
Into the overdriving amp.
Yeah.
How much? Just out of interest, if you play, I just want to see how much. It says level and gain. I want to see how much gain it's got in it, because does this have clipping diodes in it as well?
We can't really tell because the amp's overdriving, but I have done another video on the booster preamp, but there's a lot of air traffic today.
It's beginning, Nick.
Well,
it begins.
May it end soon, because soon these things aren't going to be allowed anymore, and that's not a world I want to live in. Just want to hear it with Strat to finish off. I'm buying a Marshall.
Yeah.
I'm buying a Marshall.
It's the sound.
I'm buying a Marshall.
Well, you've got a Marshall.
I'm buying a bigger Marshall.
It's the sound. It is absolutely the sound. There's
With
no
this,
question.
As glorious as it is with the Les Paul, and you love that, right? The
Yeah.
Les Paul, and because of that intense, insane bottom end with the 412.
It's difficult. It's magic. So, okay, Strat, Marshall, working. Which of these would you use?
It's really hard. I kind of like the Distortion Plus for the chewy mids.
Yeah.
I like the 250 for the clarity.
Yeah.
But I think with the Strat and the Marshall, I'd go Distortion Plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Personally. Humbuckers, I would start to lean towards the Reeves Plus because I like the way it can carve out some of that.
End, yeah.
But that's not to play high gain with humbuckers is not a place I live.
Sure.
Really. But I've got to say, you know, the straight booster
preamp I thought was a
really killer.
Like an absolute star.
I never loved a DS1 ever, so I wouldn't choose
This has just
that,
nailed that on for you.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
I've got to say that I really like the clarity in the DOD, but the way that I would use it, probably the Distortion Plus.
So annoying, isn't it?
It's so annoying. Why? It doesn't have to be this way.
It's so annoying. For all its foibles, for its awful bypass sound, for its lack of tone control, for its limited output. See, now I think there's something in that. Because it has limited output, you have to crank it up.
And that opens it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. The thing is, because I use such clean amps with glassy top end for my clean sounds,
Yeah.
you kick that on and it just sits in the right place. I think it's really cool.
Really cool. Okay, so we've done the Distortion Plus and DOD. I don't know when it was. 2 or 3 years ago, or might have even been last year when JHS released the bigger box version of the 250.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot of hubris.
Yes.
Dan and I try and stay out of all that melee. And what have we added to the debate? Probably not much. Certainly nothing on the circuit analysis because that's all been done. But what I haven't really heard is I'm plugged into an amp and mic'd up and played loud.
Yeah.
We have done that.
We have done that. That's a large box ticked.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do some of these old designs get it so right at, like 50 years ago?
Well, it's yin and yang, isn't it? Because it's right stroke wrong. There is no such thing as a free lunch. And every rose has its thorn.
Okay, yeah, right. Because to get that sound,
Yeah.
how many dB were we pushing?
Yeah. Is it the same if you attenuate the Marshall right down? Nah, not even nearly. It's just not. It's depressing.
Okay, can I try one more thing?
Yep.
Can we turn the amp down cleaner? I want to get the DS1 to sound as good as it can do in a cleaner amplifier, and I want to hit the front of the DS1 with the Distortion Plus.
Okay.
Is that cool?
We'll play out on that and see what happens. We will bid you adieu. Please go to
Indeed.
That Pedal Show store. Please, patreon.com/That Pedal Show. Massive thank you to all our patrons on Patreon. We really appreciate you.
Indeed. Massive thank you to our preferred retailers. Details in the description below.
Yeah. And just once again, thatpedalshowstore.com. Look at the accoutrement that Dan is sporting today. Look at this stuff. We might not have them in stock at the moment. But anyway, do check all this stuff. It's how we pay for the show. Thank you for being with us, everyone. We'll see you soon. Old chestnut well and truly smashed, I would say. You don't want me to attenuate the amp, do you, Dan?
No, I just want the amp turned down and clean. That's lovely.